The event trigger does just what it says. It triggers events. There are no options, but there is one event. Events triggered happens anytime the events are triggered. Let me demonstrate. Suppose you create a racing game and there are certain events that must happen in order to prepare for each new race. Such events would need to be triggered, say, by the scoreboard after the completion of a race, or by an abort key after a race has been aborted, or maybe by a countdown creator after a false start. Instead of having these different objects trigger all these preparation events individually and separately, you could just use an event trigger. I already have an event trigger in my scene, but instead of creating a complicated scene with all the preparations, I'll just use a text box to simulate that the preparations have been initiated. I'll scroll down toward the bottom of the utilities folder and find the text box. Once I've found it, I'll drag one into my scene. I'll change the custom text to read resetting race clock, repositioning vehicles, repairing obstacles. And again, these are just to simulate all these things happening instead of actually having to rebuild them into the tutorial, which would take a while. Let's put setting traps. And how about one more? Let's put clearing road debris. Alright, let's select the event trigger and expand the event. I'll drag in the text box and tell it to show text box. Again, our text box will represent all the different things that we've had the event trigger do. Now, I just need something to call the event trigger or to trigger the event trigger. Instead of using a scoreboard or an abort key or a countdown, I'll just use a push button. You can find the push button in the buttons and levers folder. Once I've located it, I'll drop one into my scene. I'll expand the triggered on-off event and drag in the event trigger and tell it to trigger events. Let's test it out. Let's pretend that the race is over and the final race results are displayed on the screen. When I press the button to close out the race results, which we're just imagining is on the screen, but when I click the button to close out the race results, it will make all the preparations for a new race.